Okay, this is Jason Berry. I'm here with Stephen Frost from Sonic Boom. All right. What's your main job title? I'm sorry.
Producer.
Producer. Main producer. Sorry about that. Okay. I played both versions here on the 4. The 3DS seems to be closer to a traditional Sonic game with some new elements to it, while the Wii U version seems to take a very different approach as a adventure game brawler. Why did they decide to take such a different approach to Sonic?
You mean just in general, or specifically the Wii U? Because I mean
for the Wii U version.
Oh, okay. I mean, because they're both very different. Like the demos for the 3DS, just like demos of the Wii U version, are done to specifically kind of get across a certain thing, right? That doesn't necessarily mean they're indicative of anything else, right? So in the case of the Wii U, what we wanted to show in this demo specifically and clearly is the differences between this game and a traditional Sonic game. So we emphasize areas that have combat, we emphasize locations that don't look like traditional Sonic games. We kind of delivered a sort of a basic speed section and a boss fight so that anyone can sort of get in there and play it. So that's sort of where the choices are as far as this specific demo. So as sort of said to a lot of people, it's like, this is a demo of the game to reflect like the differences, but it's not necessarily indicative of what every single moment is like, you know? So, but as far as changes to the game, you know, and I've said this before, is obviously is that the core focus of this game versus the 3DS is a co-op experience, right? It is very much the living room, sort of living room experience where you're sitting there with your kids, you're sitting there with your siblings, and you're playing it in a different fashion than you would normally. Having a co-op traditional like Boo sort of gameplay or even Lost World or something like that, very different experience. I mean, doing that co-op is a very difficult thing because it's basically just a race then for the most part. So we wanted to slow things down. We wanted to focus on exploration as a key thing. We wanted to focus on the development of the characters as a team, which is a key thing which you don't normally see in a Sonic game. And we wanted to kind of like dig a little bit deeper. You know, in a lot of these games, past Sonic games, you are running by this stuff so quickly, you don't get much talking or much cinematics in relation to the story of the game or the history of the game, or the world and stuff like that. And so, because this is such a united effort through the animation, the games, the toys, it was very important to build a strong foundation, a living world, and I said this over and over again, a united world where everything makes sense, and be able to explore that world at your own sort of pace. And so from that perspective, the co-op focus, the exploration focus, that what drove us to make the decisions that we did as far as designing this game.
Now, speaking of the world and the lore of the game, I've seen the latest trailers for it, and I don't know, I've got kind of an idea of what's going on there. So Lyric has been locked up for like several centuries, and I'm noticing there's statues of like echidnas and hedgehogs around. So are these like Sonic's and Knuckles' like ancestors that may have imprisoned him?
Well, we're not really talking about that. All I can say is that Lyric is very old. He has been imprisoned and freed. His sort of relationship to Sonic and hedgehogs and echidnas is something to see as you play the game. The sort of his freeing, which you see a glimpse of in that trailer, is a pivotal moment, and there's some key things that happen at that moment, so we don't want to really spoil the story. You know, Lyric is the main bad guy. His interactions and how he meets Eggman, his interactions and how he sort of meets Sonic, and how he knows Sonic, it's a little bit of a mystery right now, and so we just want to let people explore that and find that on sort of their own. We might reveal some more stuff later on, but at least right now, trying to keep that a little bit of a mystery.
All right. One of the things I liked is that the dialogue seemed to flow very naturally between the characters and their working relationships. Who was the writer on this game in particular?
Actually, we've had some other writers, but the core writers are actually at BRB, and I'm sure we'll announce it later, but it's just like we've had guys who've written a lot of stories in the past, not just specifically Sonic, but other sort of key either licensed properties or key narrative-driven stuff. So I'm sure we'll have interviews with them and who the teams were who wrote it, but there's a principal guy at BRB who wrote most of it. And that's, of course, with input from, it's not just a vacuum experience. We also have a lot of time spent with the animation guys, and even the Sanzaru guys to make sure these stories all make sense. It's key for us that the way that characters talk, the way that they interact and they act amongst each other is very consistent across all these principles. And that's harder than you think it is, because there's, you can meet only so often, but people go off in different directions. And we don't want it where in the game you reach a point where like, there's no way that Sonic would do that in the cartoon, right? It's reflected differently. So we had to really work a lot. So a lot of key people were involved in it. There's one principal guy, but the writers from the animation had a lot of key input onto it as well. And the other thing I want to say, sorry, is that what's key about us is that in traditional sort of Sonic games, a lot of other games, you have a cinematic, you have gameplay, you have cinematic. And the only place that you're pushing the story along is the cinematic. What we're trying to deliver, and there's always a fine balance to this, is that you're progressing the story, you're progressing the character development, and the interactions of the team throughout the level. So you see
that is something I really noticed in this. It reminded me a little bit of Uncharted in that kind of case.
Yeah, and hopefully like there's a balance of how much you want to play and how much you don't want to play, but just the idea of them talking and interacting and seeing how Sonic progresses from this sort of single guy who wants to run into action all the time and becoming the acknowledgement that he needs to be part of a team is a very key growth throughout this whole game.
All right, who's your personal favorite character in the series so far?
I would say Amy is probably my favorite because she does really well at platforming, which I love, and I like the hammer where it's a sort of a clearing move. She can pull it out and cause a lot of damage to a large number of sort of enemies, and I just like that fact that she's sort of that strong sort of character. I like her moveset.
Okay. Let's see. Speaking of characters, can you tell us more about Lyric?
Sort of all we're saying about Lyric is that he's a member of an ancient race, obviously, that's been in this world for a long time. You can maybe see glimpses of their civilization in the game. There is a reason why he was in prison, and there's a reason sort of why he ended up being freed. And now that he's freed, he's continuing sort of his mission that he had before he was freed, before he was frozen. So that mission in particular, which is in general to revive an army, he's basically seeking out these crystals in this game in order to revive his army, to basically take over. That's his sort of goal, and the moment he comes out of that, he continues on that mission. And of course, Sonic and team are trying to prevent that. And along the way comes Eggman, trying to take advantage of the situation and thinking that he can sort of one-up Lyric and being surprised by sort of how powerful and the sort of things that Lyric can do.
Okay, we know Sonic Team and Iizuka freaked out over some of the earlier designs that you guys made. Will we be able to ever get to see those, perhaps an art book sometime?
Yeah, I'd like to. There's so much artwork about this game. I think more so than any game I've ever worked on, the sheer quantity of concept art, prototyping and stuff was staggering. Like, I mean, you could do volumes and volumes of that stuff. Just, you can imagine, given the iterations. I mean, we went through so many iterations of these characters, and that's why I sort of chuckle a little bit when someone says, like, hey, were you sort of freaked out or sort of bothered the first time you saw these characters? I'm like, no, because I've been looking at these characters years before they were revealed. Like, I helped shape them, and I helped participate and argue for aspects of them. So, that journey of, you're talking probably about the pants and clothing in general, was just one nugget. It's a humorous nugget of a conversation, but it's just one small part of a long discussions. I mean, some of those points, as I express as a sort of discussion point, of people who say like, oh, you kind of just change these characters, whatever. Some of the changes that you see in these characters, some of them took over a year to decide on. So, and I'm talking small components. I just want to give people a sort of a perspective and a scale. This is not something that was done in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. Certain parts of this took years to just decide on. So, very specific, very key. Along the journey, yes, it took a lot of time to figure out not only what Sonic Team were comfortable with, but just us. Like, how far did we want to push these characters? How drastically different did we want to make them, right? So we went in all different directions. The designs for Eggman, completely different from what you have now. The designs for Sonic, completely different from what you've seen today. And to answer your question though, should we share them or will we share them? I hope so. I mean, at least at bare minimum, there's a ton of concept art and behind-the-scenes stuff that's in this game that you unlock as you collect rings. So you're going to see a lot of that in the game. The full extent of it, that's kind of impossible, given the sheer quantity of it. But I'm sure at some point we'll reveal more and more and more, because it's a very interesting story, and just the journey to get to where we are is a very interesting story.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Many fans have taken a liking to the new character Styx, while others say her design seems a bit inspired by Marina Raccoon or Ayeka from Skies of Arcadia. I was going to say, is there any truth to that? Also, will Styx be playable in Rise of Lyrics?
So, first question, no, we didn't look at any other characters in inspiration for Styx. She was kind of created organically, and actually she's a sort of a three-way collaboration in her development. If you think about it, the animation guys sort of had the general premise for her personality and her traits and what her background is to some degree. Sonic team took that sort of personality and started crafting like initial sort of sketches of her, and then BRB took those sketches and flushed them out to a sort of a 3D design. So this was a character, again, that was not quickly designed. She was part of a 3- or 4-way collaboration if you consider Sega of America, because we chime in on that stuff too. So even her creation was a joint effect. And as far as her connection to Marina or anyone else, it's just a pure, it's just a pure chance. It's not. It's a coincidence. We didn't look at any of those specific characters. We just knew what sort of personality we wanted, and we've had many discussions, even in what animal she was. Like I've sat there for hours to discuss what sort of animal she should be, and what her end design is. So again, reinforcing to people out there who think that sort of these choices are made willy-nilly, just her choice of animal form or what animal she is took hours and hours of meetings. So nothing is done willy-nilly. Everything is done deliberately and with a lot of thought and discussion put to it. So I'm excited about Styx. She's a really cool character. She's playable in the 3DS version. She is not playable in the Wii U version because we're focused on the 4 main characters. However, she does make an appearance and plays a role in the Wii U version of the game.
All right, cool. Yeah, I like unique characters, like animals like that, like Jungle Badger and such.
Yeah.
They do that quite a bit in the comic. As of recently, they got a Pika and such. Let's see. Will there be any connections between the Wii U and 3DS versions?
Yes, obviously, Lyric is a consistent theme. The world design is a consistent theme. They have a separate story than us and a separate sort of gameplay than us. So we wanted to build upon each other. But you'll go through some of the areas that you see in the Wii U, you'll go through some new areas that you haven't gone through. But also we have connectivity between the two, so the progress in the 3DS game, if you connect it with local connection to a Wii U, will unlock certain aspects of the Wii U game.
Alrighty, let's see. Thank you very much on that one. We've seen sections of speed gameplay similar to older Sonic titles, however, there don't seem to be any enemies or traps. Is this the case for all these sections?
The sections are all varied. This is a very basic example. This is what we call a transition road from a hub to a level. So it is just to basically pick up the pace, get people excited to go into the game. The variety of stuff in the tracks will vary. The challenge in them will vary. The craziness, as far as diversity of them, will vary, and the directions and how you're running, will be very different from this. So what you see here is basically 2D, 2.5D, very standard flat surfaces and stuff like that running. But that changes a lot. So I don't want people to look at that and say that that's indicative of what a standard track is or a speed section. It's not. It's just a transition road. It's designed for people to get easily through. It doesn't really have any obstacles. It doesn't really have that many alternate paths to go on. It's just done so people can jump in, play the game, get an idea of it, and move on. And the key thing about this demo is that we want to make sure that everyone can play all the sections, get through it. They're not all gamers. Not everyone is a hardcore gamer like you guys or us and stuff like that. So we want to be able to have the casual gamers come in, play it, and get through it and feel a sense of accomplishment. That's why those were designed. But tracks, the other sections, there's speed sections within levels, there's speed sections between levels and hubs, there are speed sections within hubs, so they're all over the place. So, the idea of like feeling it's slow and stuff like that, You got to remember that we really think about the pacing of levels, and we never want to have slow, 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 slow. We'll have slow, we'll have speed, we'll have combat, speed, slow down. We mix it up so that the pacing is an up and down experience and keeps you exciting and it keeps you appreciated for the speed sections. There's no fun in having an hour level that's just combat. No one wants that. That's not what we want to deliver. Combat and what you see is just a part of this game. There's other parts of it as well. There's the puzzle solving, there's the challenges of the platforming, there's all those other things. So yeah, so hopefully that answers
it. What kind of collectibles are there in this game?
There's a couple of them. The main ones are rings and robot parts, or robot scrap. Rings are obviously your health again, but we have a health meter, so that's represented in a visual way on the screen, on the HUD. It's not like what you traditionally have where maybe you get hit by a regular enemy and you still get 80 rings knocked out of you or whatever. It scales up to the damage that an enemy causes, just like you'd have a normal health meter. But it's represented in rings. You can only hold 100 rings initially, but you can actually upgrade and hold more later on. Ring progression, as far as how many rings you collect, unlocks bonus content in the game. And the other key thing is robot scrap, which is received from finding hidden chests or by destroying enemies. We have a combo meter. The longer number of hits that you do without a break in it, the more robot parts that exponentially get released from enemies. So you want to make sure that your combos are keeping up. Robot parts can be used to purchase upgrades. They can also be utilized to upgrade parts of the hubs that reveal secondary gameplay in other areas that you can't normally progress. So those are the main things. There's other things in there as well, such as objects that you collect for sticks, right, as an upgrade thing, and then there's other collectibles such as crowns that you'll see in the game and other stuff. But the main two things that drive a lot of it are rings and robot scrap or parts.
All right, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you. Thanks.